Hello, super listeners. Welcome to Supermania, the podcast where we review all feature-length superhero films chronologically by release date. Let's see. This is our debut, our pilot, episode 1, and we just watched Superman and the Mole Men. Let's get right into it. Hi, everybody. My name's Addie.
I'm Anton.
And I'm Zach.
So this was the very first chronologically released, very first superhero film. There were some superhero things that were on the big screen or that were filmed before this, but they were serials, which is like a really old version of TV shows, basically, that would show up in movie theaters. So we're working on focusing on specifically just feature-length movies. So let's see. This is the first actual feature-length film, but feature-length might be a stretch.
Yes, because it was only an hour. It was barely an hour long.
58 minutes.
Yeah.
Wasn't long enough.
Yeah. I felt that. It felt very rushed at certain parts, and especially since this is like the first Superman movie, you'd expect them to have some hint of an origin story.
No, it was a blurb at the beginning.
It was 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I timed it.
The weird part was, I don't know, there was a show, there was a Superman show that George Reeves was in.
Right.
Was this during that time? Because it seemed to me like it was a longer episode of the show.
Yes. Basically, what this was, we're cheating a little bit by calling this a theatrical feature film, because this was a sort of a pilot, but it was released in theaters, and the whole idea was it was supposed to test the audience reaction to a Superman show.
You know, as these things go, there weren't very many special effects in Superman and the Mole Men, but there were for the time.
There were some.
We're gonna get into that.
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna get into that.
Special in quotes.
Yeah.
What I found was $275,000 budget. That's an estimated number, and then a $5 to $10 million gross worldwide in earnings.
That's actually really, really great for that time.
If either of those might be adjusted for inflation, I have no way of knowing. Because again, they're estimated numbers. I just pulled them from IMDb. IMDb score, the user rating, I guess, is 5.9 out of 10. The Rotten Tomatoes user score is 31%. So not really looking too good.
Well,
it's almost as good as Man of Steel.
I think Man of Steel's like 40 something, so that's in 75 years,
Yeah.
they've improved just a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we should do a walkthrough of the plot. I'm gonna say some things about the history and the time that the movie was released for context. It was 1951, came out in November. Some other films that came out the same year: Alice in Wonderland, the animated Disney film, The Day the Earth Stood Still, the landmark sci-fi film, Distant Drums, which is the first appearance of the Wilhelm scream. Which,
wow.
Star Wars fans and sci-fi fans in general will be very familiar with the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah.
And then Strangers on a Train, Hitchcock film, came out that year. So that's the time we're looking at. We're not going to get into too much history with the actual Superman character because obviously there's 1,000 years of it. So we'd be talking about it the entire podcast,
Which wouldn't be bad, right?
No. I kind of like Superman.
Yeah, I'd say you guys are both big Superman fans.
I like Superman a little bit.
I like Superman too.
Go ahead.
I've always fought against the whole Superman's boring because he's too powerful, or I've always thought that was ridiculous. I am a tireless defender of Superman Returns from was that 2006 that came out? I am a defender of that movie all the time. So
especially after Man of Steel.
yeah, it looks way better in retrospect.
I'm in the camp that says that Superman is too powerful and he's got every single power, and that makes him boring. But I will say that I don't think that was necessarily true back then. So I
yeah.
think that makes him a more interesting character back then.
Definitely.
You know, over the like 60 or 70 years since that movie, the writers have decided to give him every power under the sun.
I mean, even that's kind of a funny story. You ended up with like you have the comics, and then you have the serials, you have the radio show, you have this movie, which led into the TV show, and all of that. Every single one of those things added new elements of origin and powers.
Didn't kryptonite come from the serial? Something came from something like crucial to the lore came from the radio show.
I think it was kryptonite.
Yeah, the kryptonite was his weakness. I think that comes from that. So
because there was no mention of kryptonite in this.
No.
And if you recall, I don't know if you guys caught this, but the narrator at the beginning said that he came from a planet of supermen.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
And
that
he was the last.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
So
caught that part.
even Krypton, the planet existed, but the idea that like they were all just supermen and that it has nothing to do with the red sun or the yellow sun or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting. Let's see. So Superman was created in 1933. Not a whole lot of people know that because his debut was 1938. So this movie came out 13 years after the comic book debut of the character. Let's see. The movie actually, after the TV show came out, this film was cut into a 2-part season finale for the first season of the show. They changed all the music, and then after the season 1 finale, which used the same actress for Lois as the movie, season 2 they recast Lois.
Oh.
And I think it's kind of interesting that they ended up using this as the season finale because it definitely seems like the plot had more of a TV scope than a movie scope.
I would say, yeah, that sounds right. Which struck me, I guess maybe we'll get into the plot a little bit, but it was the nuclear aspect to it. That the mole men were, they were infecting everything they touched, glowed with radiation or whatever. And I've always been interested in from that time period, the whole atomic scare thing. The nuclear power was new to them, and it seemed like this mystical, magical thing. At one point they thought it would be in all their technology, like the game Fallout shows. They felt where it's like nuclear, technology is part of everything. But they were also really, really scared of it and not knowing, what it would do. So like everything got glowed that they touched, even the ball or whatever. I thought that was that actually surprised me that they would go that route.
So that for people who haven't seen the movie, let's go ahead and give a little context. Okay. We'll talk about the beginning of the film, and we'll just like plow right through it, I guess. Let's see. So yeah, it starts with that narration over some Superman theme music that is iconic. So iconic that it was never used again, not even in the TV show.
John Williams got his inspiration for for that incredible music.
Good old generic stuff.
Yeah, it was like I guess going back, I don't know what maybe we should go watch a few episodes of the show, but it was sometimes it didn't really seem like they were selling the Superman part. Whereas now when we do superhero shows, the superhero's the star. It always seemed like here's a movie about mole people and Superman's in it. And here's Superman that It didn't really seem like it was selling Superman, which makes sense because Superman actually, as we go into, was barely in the movie.
Barely.
He was only in the movie for like 3-4 minutes. I think.
Mean, they could have had a hero theme, but they never would have used it. Right?
Yeah. Right. So.
Oh man. All right. So the very first thing that we see after the titles is a sign that says "Welcome to Silsby, home of the world's deepest oil well." So that takes care of all the exposition right away. It's like
I was kind of bugged. I was like, "Are we in Texas?" Right. I kind of was weird. It's like, "Are we in Texas?" Because then they, I guess because of course I was thinking like, is it going to be California? California's got, obviously it's filmed in California in that same valley that they film everything in. But I thought they would be like, this is Texas or welcome to Texas, though nobody was really very Texan. So that was weird. But it is 2,500 miles from Metropolis, wherever they are.
God. All right.
So
that kind of hurts my head.
What?
Where's Metropolis?
Yeah, I know. I've always, if we want to get into that for a second, I've always assumed, to me, that Metropolis was Chicago. that for actually I haven't always assumed that, but I guess over the years I didn't read Superman comics regularly, but I always thought that Metropolis was Chicago because he's from Kansas and the closest major metropolitan area, the closest city would have been Chicago.
See, that actually makes sense. And then Gotham's New York.
Gotham's
right?
New York,
Yeah.
right. And coastal city, wherever the Flash is from, that would be L.A. or whatever. Or I guess Flash and Green Arrow are from coastal city or something like that.
San Fran and San Diego.
Which makes sense. And San Fran is where the Arrow's from. Would make sense because he's like a crazy raging liberal in the comics. So that would make sense.
So we figured it out. We figured it all
for
out.
our purposes, which really, really drives me crazy with, among other things, with Batman vs. Superman, with Metropolis and Gotham being like right next to each other. That was, of all the things in that movie, that is the absolute dumbest thing that they were like, that you would have like New York and Chicago would be separated by a river. That doesn't even make sense.
You just didn't get how deep the allegory was. It was like a tale of two cities, man.
I guess so.
Tale of two cities.
I
like
know.
Hemingway.
That bugged me the whole time. Yeah, I really didn't make any. Just if we want to just we can indulge a rant for a second. I just really hated that.
What the dickens was that?
It didn't make any sense geographically or from a hero standpoint. Like it didn't make any sense or whatever.
I mean, it
next to
retroactively made Man of Steel make less sense.
Yeah,
because it's like, wait, where was he? Right there.
Yeah, and it's almost like they did that because they wanted to have where obviously they want to have where Bruce could drive over to the collapsing building or whatever. And I'm like, Bruce has a private jet. He could just have been there for a conference or something and have to make them right next to each other. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And what they did was they made Metropolis as New York and Gotham as New Jersey. Yeah. I guess Batman's the Cape Crusader of Jersey City or of Newark or I don't know. I mean,
I guess that makes the Joker one of the Sopranos. I guess.
God. We figured it out. We figured everything out.
It goes really deep, man. It's all deep.
It goes to the top.
Yeah.
The president, I hear, is Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
In real life.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. But anyway, back to Superman and the Mole Man.
Do we have to?
I mean, there isn't much to talk about. It's only an hour long.
Oh man. Yeah. All right. So let's see. The guy. What is it? National Oil Co. The guy's name is Benson, right?
Was that the guy? I can't remember. Like
I might be wrong.
Well, I know. Like, the guy that was at the site. You mean?
Yeah.
I don't think Benson was there. Was it? They all. It's hard. It's hard to tell those guys apart
because it's
all black
we
and white.
We did not watch the Blu-ray version.
Yeah. My daughter was like, "Is it ever going to be color?" I'm like, "No, honey. It's not going to be color."
Yes, but only once they go to Kansas.
When Superman shows up, she thought it would go to color. I was like, "No, it's not going to go to color."
I mean, that's pretty close to the '78 movie, right?
Well, yeah. That movie does change.
Yeah.
It does, but I think that's purposeful with the way it does that. But yeah.
Let's see. So, the guy's hiding tools at the oil
or burying
the oil
them,
well
or whatever,
or burying them, and it's really weird. He like reaches into like a coil of pipe or something and like pulls out some burlap sack and like hides it, and it never comes up again.
No.
So
I think that's where his like scientific tools and his beakers full of the radium.
I guess maybe he was checking the
radium.
But I don't know. Like, why would he keep that a secret?
Radium.
Why would he keep that a secret? The whole thing was odd. And then the old man shows up. The old man.
I'd be pretty excited if I found radium.
I know, like if you're digging for, I don't mean because they don't really. I guess they're oil people, but if you dig and find radioactive stuff, that's also valuable.
Yeah,
that's also worth a lot of money, especially back then when we were making bombs and all that. So.
Not to BP. So Lois Lane and Clark Kent it's been 2 minutes in the movie, and Lois Lane and Clark Kent just show up out of nowhere.
Well, no, the PR guy brought them. They were doing a story. The big city paper was doing a story on the small oil outfit.
That's all told to us. We're not shown them like at the Daily Planet.
That's true. That's true.
Like deciding to go or like getting the assignment or whatever. They just show up. and we already know that it's the world's deepest oil well.
Which is it's a great story.
So let's see. The drill apparently went 6 miles down, which is deeper than any man's ever drilled before. Which sounds
and that's
really
apparently to the center of the Earth too. That's what that is.
Yeah,
according to Lois.
According to Lois, the whole planet is 12 miles across. I did not know this.
Yeah.
I did not know
Like,
that.
I'm pretty sure 32,000 feet is not all the way.
A mile up and down is a lot longer than a mile sideways. That's what I'm told. That's how Lois understands it.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's how the universe works.
Yeah.
But they show up to do a big story on the big oil well, and the big oil well has already had its big sign put up for so that they can draw tourists or whatever to the town. But as soon as they show up, it's only been there for a little while, and it's closed. They're done.
It's been shut down.
They're shutting it down.
And the PR guy did not know. They did not tell the PR man.
Right.
Who brought these reporters from the big city.
It seems like the first guy to know that should know.
Nope, they didn't.
So there's a line that comes up a couple times, or at least a word. It's this phrasing that I feel like is really old fashioned, and it made me laugh a couple times. I'm a newspaper man. I'm a newspaper man.
/ private investigator, because it's almost like he was Clark Kent, detective. That's what he immediately started. Oh, I'm going to find out what's going on here. I'll do it, ma'am. I'll take care of this.
This could have been a Batman thing.
Yeah.
Just fine.
Yeah.
It would have been fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did not need to be Superman.
I'm a newspaperman. Back when the press had respect.
It's like I'm a businessman. So Clark and Lois end up going to a hotel because they decide, okay, I guess we're not going to get a story. But then Clark is like, no, fuck that. I'm going back.
We're gonna, and that's the good reporter in him. That's one of the things I noted was that it's funny how they mistreat Lois, because Lois doesn't want to do anything. She's like, well, there's no story here. Let's just go. And I'm like, don't you report her instincts? They don't give her any.
She's not the go-getter that we've come to expect.
Which is probably why all current incarnations of Lois and later on, they always made sure that she was the hard driving reporter. She wanted the Pulitzers, or she snuck into places to get the story. Whereas early on, and this is just the way they wrote women back then.
Yeah, and
I feel like they were treating her like a kid the whole time.
Yeah,
yeah, they literally mansplain to her. Like
she gets scared at some point from two of the Clint Howards that show up, and the coroner decides to give her a pill off screen. And then, before he leaves, he's like, make sure before you go to sleep, you take another pill. And it's like, what did you give her? Quaaludes?
Yeah, a little Valium, I guess. I don't know. It's because she's hysterical, because women get hysterical when they see.
She holds her own in the end, though. She definitely throws a punch.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
And gets punched herself, I think. She doesn't get punched.
Yeah.
She throws a punch.
So I let the Clint Howard out of the bag. That was my big joke for this whole episode. The mole men, they say they had the bodies of moles, but little the men, like the head of a man or something.
Yeah, let's back up for just a second though, because so hold on. So Clark and Lois, they drive back out to the site from the hotel.
Yes.
And they find the night watchman there dead. And then what's funny, the other thing about Lois is she's like, well, there's a dead body here. Let's no story. Let's just go. And I'm like, there's a dead guy here, reporter. You were the first one to find it. Like, don't you want to know? And she's like, no, let's just go now.
No, but before they go, Clark immediately starts grabbing evidence. He's like, wait a second. If this guy just died, then why is this over here?
You are contaminating the crime scene.
And Lois is like, I'm going to call the cops. And he's like, no, you should call Jerry.
Yeah,
call our buddy instead.
In case he wants to dispose of his body before the authorities get here.
Don't call. Whatever you do not call the cops, Lois. I cannot stress you enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were two moments where Superman used his X-ray vision, and I think this was one of them. Because I don't know if you noticed, but Pop, the old man who died, was behind a door. And Superman's like, oh, there's a dead body over there. We gotta go check that out. And Lois didn't even question. She's like, how did you see through that door?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Did you notice that?
I did not catch that.
He is not cautious with his secret identity in this. At one point, he literally they saw, like, everybody saw Superman bring like carry somebody to the hospital, and Lois shows up at the hospital, and Clark is there, and he goes, I mean Superman flew him here,
Yeah.
and it's like, wait, what? Oh god, come on, dude.
The suit was practically the Superman suit was practically hanging out of his clothes.
Clark Kent happens to be in this small town, and Superman happens to go there. Neither of them have ever been there before.
Lois starting her 70-year, not noticing.
He
things
looks
about
and
Clark.
sounds exactly the same.
Yeah.
He acts exactly the same.
He takes those glasses off, dude. It's hard to tell.
So
It's hard to tell.
you know-
So they find the body, and then the guy. So the Clark goes off to investigate or whatever, leaving Lois in the room, and then the Clint Howards appear.
Clint Howard's come out of nowhere.
at the window.
I thought that Ron Howard's little brother got his start in acting on when he was a kid on an episode of Star Trek, the original Star Trek, and like he showed up with no makeup, and they were like, "Oh my God, what a freaky alien!" And it was kind of sad. But then he shows up in this like 10 years earlier, the same age, and with clones of himself.
with a buddy. With his They weren't. I guess, and again for the time, I'm sure these were, freaky looking enough for the time for 1951. They don't look very compelling to or scary to me or any of us. But it was still. I still love. Lois sees them, she screams, they all come back, and she gives this description. She was like, they were mole men, and they look awful, and their bodies were all, and I'm like, they were two people in brown.
It was two people. It was two people. They have like black clothes on.
Yeah, like furry suits.
And they walk around like characters in a David Lynch movie, just like.
They can't see you. What
yeah. I'm
it's
sorry.
a podcast. It's not a visual medium.
This is an audio-based medium. I was walking very slowly and arched forward.
Right. That's they did creep along in that way. That was funny. They were very, very. You can tell the stage direction is act very curious but unsure, and you move when you look at things, and they weren't that scary. But she screamed. She gave this blood curdling scream, which is. If you were an actress back then, that was 90% of getting you hired was, can you scream?
Right.
Do you look good on camera? And can you scream? Yes. Okay. That's what they wanted from her.
So yeah, the coroner is there because of the dead body, and he has given her some Valium or something, some kind of pills.
Because
Just-
she was hysterical.
Just willy-nilly. Like, make sure you take some of those, like a handful of them before you go to sleep.
In her defense, all the men seem to be dropping dead. She was just, getting hysterical. Maybe she was doing better than all the men who were all dropping dead at the sight of these mole people.
Yeah.
So.
That's true.
A lot of men with weak hearts in this town.
If you compare it directly, like she did better than the old guy.
Yeah.
She lasted.
Yeah, she did last.
So yeah, Clark ends up sticking around after everybody leaves. They decide, okay, whatever, it was some mole people or something. We gotta go talk about it or something.
But and then the guy, the worker from the plant shows him like, well, let me tell you what I think is going on, and he goes and shows him the radium or whatever, the nuclear, the irradiated stuff that he has that shows that that digging down, they've hit something that's radioactive.
And he finally reveals to Clark why they stopped drilling, and it's because they couldn't drill no more. They hit a ceiling basically, and there's a hole. These people are hollow earthers. They are hollow earthers. They believe that the earth just has a big hole under the ground.
Well, they don't. But they believe it with evidence. So that's actually something. If you believe something and you have evidence for it, that's not so crazy.
So you're saying that these people have opinions that are more advanced than some people today.
Today, yeah.
And this is back in 1951.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
You know what else happened? Superman called somebody. A mob forms. Because these guys keep showing up, and Superman shows up and calls one of them a Nazi.
No, he said Jack. But I wrote that down. He called them jack-booted. He said, "You act like a bunch of jack-booted Nazis."
Yeah.
This is only a few years after World War II.
This is 1951. Yeah, that's hard hitting.
that was pretty. That was something.
Man.
Wait, didn't he call them Nazi stormtroopers as well?
Yes, yeah, it's stormtrooper. That's what he said. Yeah.
Nazi stormtroopers.
Yeah.
I was like, this ain't Star Wars.
But yeah, can we talk about the first appearance though of Superman, like when he did
Absolutely.
when he first becomes Superman?
It is 25 minutes into the film, and he finally shows up in costume.
To stop the mob. That was the first incarnate, because so the mole people, they go into town and they jump into some little girl's room, which is weird in and of itself. And they go in this little girl's room, and some other people had gotten hurt, or some other people had shown them, so they showed up at the sheriff's office and they decided to form a mob to go look for them. And the guy's like, take the dogs and you go here and you go here and you guys go here and we'll flush them out.
And it's like the entire town population of 15 people.
Well, it's all the men with guns were there, Addie. That's the important thing. The men with the guns and the dogs.
I mean, how could you have stormtroopers without guns?
And dogs. You got to have the dogs too.
Let's see. So yeah, he shows up with his costume. The costume's great. It's great. It's better than Man of Steel. It looks like Superman. You know what I mean?
And he does look a little
his cape's a little dumpy.
He looks a little padded too around the middle.
He does not have the Superman physique.
No.
He's got shoulder pads. I mean, the shoulder pads weren't as big as his actual suit. You know, the one he's wearing is Clark Kent, but-
It wasn't.
So it stops a little short.
Yeah.
What's that?
So the shoulder pads stop a little short, basically.
Oh yeah. It stopped. It was like mid abdomen. I was like, just go all the way down.
Yeah, it's I guess
They didn't have the budget for that.
for the time, I'm sure George Reeves was a big, strong, handsome guy, whatever, with a great physique, but it didn't look good for us. And in the suit, it didn't look good. But there was a reason he was padded, because he took some blows from the bad guy of the film, Nelson. Was it not Nelson? What was his name? What was the guy's name?
Benson.
Benson, yeah.
I thought Benson was the
Benson
good guy.
was the
No, Benson is the mob guy.
Yeah, and he took some swipes at Superman. He tried to punch him, and he tried to punch him in the face even, and Superman no sells it, of course, but I was actually kind of impressed with that effect, because he hit him, and he hit him, looked like he hit him pretty hard, and he didn't react because of course it's Superman. But
another thing that I was impressed by was that George Reeves was actually lifting up full-grown men.
Yeah.
Kind of doing it effortlessly. I was like,
I mean,
lifting
you
them
could
up
tell,
and saying lines and not, losing breath at all. I was actually really
Yeah.
impressed.
I mean, you could tell on the close-up that he had on the close-up, like he wasn't actually holding them. It was just like the guy was propped up or whatever. But in the longer shot, you could see him pick the guy up.
yeah.
You could actually see it, like full frame. So yeah, I mean that was pretty impressive. I mean the guy doesn't have the physique, but I guess he's got the strength.
I mean, yeah, he was strong. I'm sure he had like dad strength going on, but like he just didn't look. He didn't have like the modern sculpting of the human body like we do it now. It was weird to see him just like a 1950s strong guy like lifted him up. But
the 1951 equivalent of steroids back then was a turkey dinner.
well, Jack LaLanne was around then. He was telling men how to not Jack LaLanne. What was it was what's that guy? Tony Atlas.
Oh yeah.
Was it Teddy Atlas?
Or wait.
Tony Atlas? No, there was always in the comic books that you could use this technique and you can make yourself big and strong.
Huh.
So
Mr. Atlas? I don't know.
yeah, something like that.
Let's see. So after Superman shows up, we get to quote unquote see him fly for the first time, and oh boy, we said we were going to get into the special effects, and we can get right into it. We don't see him fly at all.
No, he jumps off the screen each time.
He jumps up and it cuts away. Let's see. It looks like they basically hooked up a camera to the back of a truck and pointed it down. So like effectively, we're getting the view that Superman's dick might have if he was flying 10 feet over the mob. That camera is not held very high up at all, and it's not his view. It's like a view of the mob from where he might be, I guess. That camera angle was very confusing to me.
That is one of Superman's many powers, though. He can see out of his penis.
And his powers can be whatever the writer wants it to be.
Dick sight.
I did like when his initial flight when he kind of jumped off the screen.
Yeah.
And they kind of I did appreciate the whole they kind of fell back and there was a breeze and the sound effect. I was like, well, because one of the cool things about Man of Steel was like, you know, when Superman flies, like he has an effect on things around him, like things float or whatever, because the energy he's using. And who knows if that's what they were going for, but it was still cool. I still appreciated that.
They did it first.
Yeah, it's like Zack Snyder just copied that from other people.
Come on, Zack, stop copying Superman and the Mole Man.
We have to be nice to Zack Snyder now, dude. We have to be nice to him.
Give Lois something to do.
Joss Whedon will fix that, I'm sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, actually, turns out Joss is a jerk too. There are no more heroes if Joss Whedon's not a hero.
Not even super ones. Let's see. So the mob is charging, and they all have their weapons, and you can tell that like they ran out of stuff to grab. So like some of them have guns in the front, and then like some of them have like fake wood planks, and then some guy in the back has a barber pole, like a striped barber pole.
But he grabs it. That was the best part. He grabbed it off the wall. Like they were like going down the street angrily to find the mole man, and he goes by the barber shop and literally rips the pole off the
It's so crazy.
off the wall and carries it into the mob. And then another guy.
It was like
it's like
15 seconds of him just ripping this barber pole.
It's like what are you gonna do with that? Lick it menacingly?
You know, it was, and then some other guy pulls something out of some kind of, there was something on the ground. He like lifted it up, and that was his weapon. And they're going to chase the poor mole man.
It was a classic good stick moment. This is a good stick. Everybody's had a moment like that. You find a good stick and you carry it with you.
Yes, it was a good stick.
Thanks for not leaving me on my own there.
I
was starting to think maybe I'm the only one who finds good sticks.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna leave you hanging out there.
Thank you.
But so I think the part comes. I think they corner. They find the mole man on the dam, quote unquote.
Yeah. And the mole man like. They have a spotlight, and as soon as the spotlight gets the mole man, they like drop to the ground and plank on top of the thing.
Yeah, and they can't see him anymore. They lose him. It's so. And the guy. So then the mob sees the mole man as they're moving. He's like, bring up that spotlight. And the guy brings up a big flashlight and they shine it on the dam. And this dam seems to be about like 5 feet tall, but but it's taller than that because they spot the mole man. The guy takes a shot at the mole man. He hits him. And one of the mole men falls, and Superman flies up at that point and catches him from certain death.
And it's a weird effect shot right there.
Yes,
I guess technically we saw Superman fly right there.
Yeah, he caught the guy.
But it's weird. It's two shots. The first one looks like two puppets on strings, like dangling towards each other.
Which I'm sure is exactly what it was.
So then the second shot, it's almost like slow motion too. And then the second shot is like clearly like a rear projection type thing, maybe.
We should be watching it. We should have it on the thing. We should could fast forward to it.
I mean, I could probably do that honestly. I'm not gonna bother with it right now.
All right.
Let's see. So yeah, Superman catches one of them.
He says, "Hold on, young fella. I'm gonna take you to a hospital." So he takes the mole man to what I'm sure is a human hospital. It is not.
and they're gonna operate on their mole bodies.
But Superman, which weirdly he takes off with the wounded mole man who has been shot. He takes off and he literally disappears from the movie for 30 minutes.
He's gone.
He's gone.
Thank you for saying that, because Superman exits the film, and this is now just the mole man.
The mole, and then the mob. The next 20 minutes of the mob chasing this poor single mole man. I think they chase him and they actually shoot him because he bleeds and he falls and he looks so frightened. Watching it with one of my kids, they were like, is he gonna get away? Are they gonna kill him? Because he's just.
I thought he was gonna die.
So they take him to a shed. Well, he runs to a shed, into the shed.
And the dogs. Can I talk about the dogs for a second? So the dogs are chasing him to the shed. And basically, these dogs sound like walruses. We hear walruses
because they're bloodhounds. Bloodhounds bay. They bay.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they just played a walrus sound effect over and over again instead, and they said that's good enough.
That was the bay of a bloodhound. That wasn't a walrus.
So they chased the one Clint Howard into the shack.
Into the shack. Right.
And he doesn't want to let one of his dogs bite him because they're afraid he's radioactive.
Yeah, because they did see the glowing blood. If it
so-
bleeds, we can kill it.
So they decide to burn it down and breathe in the fumes instead.
So they do set. So they set all these, like, they put brush and all kinds of stuff around the shed and light it on fire. And it's actually a pretty intense looking blaze. And it burns. Like, for like 5 minutes, the scene goes on. We're just watching this flames go
It's
up.
intense.
This
was the climax. This is where that...
just panicking and trying to find his way out.
Exactly.
And and it's funny because I was thinking, like, so I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, okay, so this is where Superman's going to come back and blow...
Right.
And blow the flames out with his super breath.
No.
Or whatever.
That does not happen.
It goes on and on and on. Eventually, the mole man's like, fuck it, I'll save myself.
Instead, the little person version of the guy from the little person version of the guy from Princess Bride says, "This is inconceivable." And he breaks the floorboards and he gets out.
And he escapes himself. And it's like, that's what he does. And he's like, okay, and then he's like, I'll fix you motherfuckers. And he runs back to Mole City, and he gets some of his boys. But
I have to say, I totally expected that. I knew he was going to come back, but I thought that he was going to come back with one, and it was going to be the same actor as the guy who was shot.
Nope, he brought a crew, including what looked like a female. Actually, one of them looked like a female, like the mama. I guess maybe he brought his mother. I don't know.
So I did check the cast for the people who played the Mole Men.
Were they children? I was wondering if they were kids.
They were not children.
No.
They were little people.
Yeah.
And two of them, none of them were credited, which is, good job, Hollywood. But two of them were actually in what is classically considered a so bad it's good movie called Terror in Tiny Town. Terror in Tiny Town is about it's a black and white Western film that is about a town exclusively populated by little people. Where outlaws come in and there's a sheriff and it's just a Western, but they happen to be little people.
They're all little people. That's
Terror of Tiny Town or in Tiny Town. I don't know. So yeah, two of those actors were actually in that one as well.
That's pretty impressive. Your research skills are impeccable. That's
we
should watch that movie.
I'm so good at it.
But yeah, so wait a minute. He goes back to not Tiny Town. See what you understand? He goes back to Mole Town.
Underground.
Go underground. And then the mob, thinking he's dead, they go back to town.
Yeah, Benson is like, "Hey, did you hear any screaming?" And Benson's buddy is like, "No." And they're like, "We should leave. We should just assume we did what we were here for. Let's go."
Yeah, I was very confused about that because apparently screaming means he died, but then they were like, "No, we didn't hear screaming."
Well, I guess
Right.
He didn't die.
When they shot the first mole man on the dam, I guess he screamed really which I kind of I must have blanked that out or something.
I heard it. I mean, it wasn't like an animal scream or
it was
something.
blood curdling.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he
it's kind of like
so they go back to now the actress shifts back to town.
Yeah.
Now we're in the hospital and the Clark Kent is now he has appeared again. Clark Kent is there.
He's just magically there.
And he's arguing with the hospital administrator who's like, "Why do you have a mole man in my hospital? Get this mole man out of my hospital." And Clark's like, "No, sir, you have to operate on it." He's like, "I don't even know what that thing is. This is a people hospital. Get it out of here."
Which is kind of a good point. But it's also really racist.
It's not unreasonable.
But then the guy just goes, "Well, I'm gonna leave. Don't. He better not be here in the morning.
Crazy kids,
whatever.
Get that damn alien out of my hospital. I'll be back in the morning.
Get off my hospital's lawn."
But the young idyllic doctor says, I want to help the mole creature, but I can't find anybody to operate. So Clark Kent's like, "Fuck it, I'll help you operate." So Clark Kent, in addition to being a newspaper man and a private detective,
Being a nurse takes no qualifications whatsoever.
it's also a nurse
You can
practitioner.
be a newspaperman.
Superman is a very pioneering character.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So they go in there and
Wait, did they pass the part where Lois? I think Lois appears again.
Yeah.
And this is another
at the hospital.
The other mistreatment of Lois, because Lois is like, okay, so the mole people are real. We should write a story about this. This is like the biggest story of ever. Like, if there's like mole people living under the earth, and they're all like, no, silly girl, we can't write a story about it.
Clark is like, "Shut up. Shut up."
She actually wants to do her job. Like, this is a huge story. And they're like, no, silly girl.
to his credit, she's constantly calling him weakling and coward. So they
was,
probably don't like each other that much, although apparently they love.
She's like, oh, he always disappears. He always disappears when something big happens.
And like this version of Clark, that's a bigger problem than it usually is. This guy's like headstrong, and I don't know if you guys noticed this, but earlier in the movie, it seemed like he was taking. You know how it took so long for Superman to show up in costume? It seemed like Clark was taking great pains to like make sure that his whereabouts were accounted for. So he's like, I'm going to stay here as long as you're okay with giving me a ride back to town. And it's like, wait, that's what you're worried about? Like, you're literally the guy who could not worry about that.
You could have
the
run there
only
in
guy,
like 10
probably.
seconds. Yeah.
So like it seemed like he's being really careful about this, and then later he's just like later I'm out.
I just appeared at the hospital all of a
and
sudden.
then Superman shows up and then takes the guy to the hospital, and then Lois is like, Clark, where wasn't Superman here? And he's like, yeah, Superman. I brought this guy here. I mean Superman brought this guy here.
Superman left. He had to go. He departed the scene.
But it was almost like he was throwing shade at Superman. Like, oh yeah, no, I'm still here.
Superman
he dipped.
bolted. Yeah,
he dipped.
But they shame Lois into not wanting to report the biggest story in history, and then the mob shows back up. So Superman operates on the mole man with the doctor, with the young idealistic doctor, and the townspeople hear about the mole man in their hospital and show up again at the hospital, fully loaded with their guns and all that, and want to kill the mole man.
Right. So,
and that's when, and then when they show up, and then I think
that's the point where Superman calls the mob Nazis.
he calls them.
He says, "Wait a second."
Stormtroopers.
And I mean, they do make a really good, like they do a good job of making it so that you feel sympathetic towards the mole men.
Yeah.
Because like they do say that they have mole bodies, but you clearly see that they're people. Like these are people.
Yeah.
And like any difference in their appearance could easily be explained by this radioactive shit that they live in.
I think the doctor even mentions that. I think he says like their bodies are very similar to ours. Their makeup and stuff is very similar.
So like maybe a different race, but calling them a different species like is almost like insulting to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean they do a good job, and I think that leads into the theme of the film, which is it's talking about communism. I mean, I thought it was pretty obvious.
Yeah, like everything back then was like some kind of allegory to communism or anti-Semitism, maybe even.
Maybe anti-Semitism too,
Yeah.
Wrapped in there. But I felt like it was like almost like a peaceful communist kind of thing, or not peaceful communist, but like a cry for peace instead of falling into the Red Scare or whatever.
Yeah.
Where Superman was the voice of reason.
Yeah. He does seem like a disapproving parent almost every time he's on screen. And Superman is playing the parental role.
Yeah. And he doesn't come across though as like modern Superman who's all overpowered and has to like hold himself back. Like, he straight up punches a guy in the jaw.
Yeah, he's like,
hard.
you all need to go back, or I'm gonna start kicking ass.
He just hits him.
He does start kicking a little ass, but it makes it again. It pushes home that the fact that Benson is a real bad guy. He again starts inciting the mob. They're gonna kill, and then but they disperse, and then the mole men have now returned. Three of them, including the original one, and now they have a gun. They have a weapon of some kind.
We're told it's a weapon by Superman, but it was a vacuum cleaner. It was a vacuum cleaner with like a funnel on the end.
Yeah, espresso machine. I don't know what it was. It was.
It shot cotton balls.
Yeah,
that were made of light.
But it did. But they did. The mole men show up and they go to the hospital looking for their buddy, and Benson tries to sneak up on them. And they blast him with their death ray.
It's like right when Superman is bringing their injured buddy back out.
Yeah, he's bringing their buddy out. Yep.
He doesn't see what's going on, but Benson is going to shoot them, and they shoot Benson instead. And it's really, really unclear what's actually happening to Benson.
He was in pain.
He's screaming.
He was like, "Stop it! Stop!
There's no mark. Like he's not singed or anything. He's just like.
Well, it could have been a neutron weapon. Maybe nothing shows on the outside.
Yeah,
that's more science.
Well, one thing's for sure: Benson's not having kids after this movie.
They're gonna be girls.
Whether it's from the
Definitely
radium
sterilized him.
or from the weapon or from getting clocked in the jaw by Superman, which like echoed, like rippled through his body into his testes.
He did, but Superman, being the hero, he stopped. He jumps in front of the ray gun in the Superman pose. Which, if you'll notice, Superman hits the Superman pose repeatedly, like like standing up with his hands on his hips.
He comes
like
across
his chest out.
It comes across more Peter Pan like. Because there's not like a reason to do it most of the time, and he just does it.
He could have been like, stop, peaceful creature, stop. No, he just stands there, and they stop, and he's like, okay, you guys can go home now. And he helps carry their wounded comrade back to the hole,
which was weird because like at first he brought the guy out, and then he like handed him to one of the mole men.
yeah,
and then he jumped in front of the gun, and he just kind of stood there, and like they didn't stop shooting, and it's like. These mole men know that he's the one that was helping. They literally watched him.
Were trying to kill Superman.
They watched him carry their buddy out and hand him gracefully to one of them.
Well, you can't just stop that weapon. You have to like wind it down. I don't know.
I don't know either. But
I thought it was rather impressive looking.
Similar to how it had no effect on Benson, it had no effect on Superman anyway. So, whatever. Then it cuts to back at the oil well, and Superman is re-carrying this guy. The
well, of
injured
course,
mole
Superman
man.
carries him. He's Superman.
He doesn't want to fly him to the well. He just wants to walk him there.
Right.
Well, it wasn't that far, obviously.
We only have 275,000 to work with. So why would he fly him when he could walk him?
Well, they had to save the budget because they put the mole man, the mole people return to their hole, and the hole closes, and they all step away, and then the hole explodes. It's like like all
and
this.
it was at that moment that I realized that the hole is actually under the oil well.
Yeah.
I did not realize that it was under the oil well. It just seemed like a random hole.
Well, because a little hatch. Because they didn't even show. Like you would have thought, like early on, they'd have showed the hatch. Like this is the hatch that goes down to the hole. I don't think we ever saw that.
Right.
We just saw them climbing out of it. But you'd like,
Oh man! And when Superman is helping these guys get into the hole, did you notice like there's no ladder in there?
They all just kind of
they like put their feet in, and then they just kind of like put their arms up and just kind of like fall in. And he like just drops the injured one in there, just like here, take him.
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
And
he
then
didn't even put his hands out. He just like literally holds his hand up and just slides down.
Right, and then they do the same thing with the weapon. And I guess I mean you can presume that whoever was on top like grabbed the weapon and pulled it down, but like.
It was funny the way they handed Superman the weapon because they like before they get in, he like the guys are climbing in, he just hands Superman the death ray, like hold my death ray, like get into this hole, please.
You hang on to this, but give it back. You can't have it.
Yeah, the townspeople can't have their guns, but the mole people, you can have your.
They can have their ray guns.
Yeah.
Teleporting machine.
I mean, he literally bent the barrel of one of the townspeople's guns, but this other thing, this like vacuum thing, no, whatever.
You can have it. It's harmless.
Keep it. So yeah, they that's when we learn from the guy in the beginning. The results came back from the test. Turns out it was never
radiation.
It was never radium.
It was phosphorescence.
It was harmful phosphorescence all along. We were afraid for no raisins.
Yeah. So no actual nuclear scare.
No grapes, no raisins.
And that was the movie.
That was
58 minutes.
That's the whole movie. It ends with Lois Lane's classic Beauty and the Beast type line, King Kong style line. It's almost as if they were saying, "You live your lives and we'll live ours," and then hard cut to the end. And it's just done.
It was really the whole thing was had a Twilight Zone feel to it almost.
Yeah,
I've seen it. It's almost like that could be an episode of the Twilight Zone, which there may have been a Twilight Zone episode along similar lines.
I guarantee.
But where the lesson is that like we're the violent ones, we're the violent mob, and we see peaceful creatures and immediately attack them, and so that was actually really Twilight Zone-y.
It also, I mean, kind of like what we said earlier. Just it didn't seem like Superman really needed to be there. For the story.
Yeah.
It was not really like a movie scale plot.
Like Superman's powers weren't really needed.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess to stop the death ray, but he could have just,
Needed or shown.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you could have just had them show up with a weapon and not use it, and then the good person convinces them, "No, we're peaceful. Take your man and go in peace." But yeah, it's a Twilight Zone episode. It could have been.
So, I guess opinions and analysis. What do you guys? How do you feel about this thing? How do you feel, Zach?
I really liked it, actually. I kind of like that. I like when movies about superheroes are really anybody with special powers. It's not just about the world coming to an end. When it's just about
I do like that. Yeah, that is refreshing.
Just something in a very small setting happening, and trying to maybe teach you something. Sometimes I hate to be taught or lectured at, but I didn't really feel like this movie was really lecturing me about anything. I felt that its message was pretty clear, and I can imagine that for that time that the message was pretty strong and resonated really well.
Yeah.
So just, like what Lois said, is let's just leave each other alone and not become angry mobs and cause this mass hysteria. So, but overall, I thought it was really good. I thought the acting was, good for that time, I guess. George Reeves, especially as Clark Kent, was really good.
He was. I do like how the movie was. It was played sincerely. Like the whole thing was played. They played it straight. He was really. Which I guess was George Reeves. That was his first contribution to the thing. Was to treat Superman and whatever it is, treat it seriously. Not where the opposite of what they did with Batman when they brought Batman to the screen. Batman was not treated.
Yes, that'll be our next episode.
All right.
So we'll talk about that when the time comes. But yeah, despite a little bit of camp, I feel like this movie holds up pretty well. You do kind of have to have those retro glasses on when you watch it. You have to have that mindset of it is an older movie.
Put yourself in a drive-in in 1952 watching this. It's
not as hard to watch for a modern audience as something like a silent film. It's nothing like that. It's very watchable. It's not hard to follow. It's not really boring. It really doesn't have any time to be boring. It's less than an hour.
Yeah.
Personally, I would recommend it. If you're a Superman fan or a comic book fan, superhero fan, if you have found this podcast and you're listening to it, I think it's worth watching. It's worth checking out.
Yeah, I think so.
What do you think?
I liked it too. It was it's almost like I can remember watching things like that when I was a kid. Like a Saturday afternoon or something that might come on, and it's only like an hour, an hour and a half with commercials. But yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was I want to say cute. I don't think cute's the right term, but it was it was
charming.
For that charm. Yes, it's charming. And
it's definitely got
and
charm.
George Reeves, you can see where he is where I guess I don't know if he's a legendary actor, but he definitely is a known actor. And he was known for this role. I mean, I think he died. Not sure, he died sometime not long after this. I mean, he died late 50s. So, and this role defined him. So you can see you can see his influence on say the Christopher Reeves portrayal. You can see it.
Yes.
You can see George Reeves. Is it Reeve? I think it's George Reeves.
George Reeves,
yeah,
Christopher Reeve.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
People think it's Christopher Reeves.
Yeah, it's.
But that's only if there's an apostrophe, and you're talking about something he owns.
Right. But yeah, you can see that. So you can see the influence that character would have, and keep in mind it was only by the time the 1978 Superman comes out, that's only like 25 years, which then would be nothing. It's
right.
That would be like now Batman now looking at Michael Keaton Batman. It was the same time period, so
yeah,
same distance between the portrayals. So.
Oh yeah,
so
that's pretty interesting to think about.
Yeah, we're coming up on 30 years for Batman soon. Batman '89.
Yeah,
it'll be 30 years. So
it's interesting. You go back a certain distance in film, and it's almost like you can remember that time, and it doesn't feel that far away. You go back past a certain threshold though, and it's like, whoa, that's the past.
Yeah, it's funny. I think about it because I'm 41 now, and I think it's like, and I remember like 2 years ago, we passed like 30 years from Back to the Future.
Yeah.
So I don't like the 80s. That was 30 years ago. I was like, yeah, it was. It was like 30. That was over 30 years ago now. So it's weird because if I think about the 80s when I was a kid, so 30 years before the 80s would have been the 50s. That seemed like 1,000 years prior. Like everything had changed between now and then.
So
I'm like,
I'm 31. I like Back to the Future. Didn't see it in theaters, obviously. But my marker for that the same kind of thing is Jurassic Park. It was 1993.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And it
And that's
blows
good.
my mind how much time has passed since then.
Yeah, that's like 25. It's coming up on 25 years since
Yeah,
that.
and if you go 25 years before that, then it's stuff that when I was a kid I thought was just like so old.
Yeah.
And now that's me. Now I am that so old thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I don't know. I don't know if maybe. I guess I don't know if it's because we get older, time compresses, we get older, and also we live in an age now where everything old is instantly retrievable. Like in the internet age, we can go back and you can go back and retrieve those things and see them very quickly. So the distance doesn't seem because in the 80s, think about it, like watching something like Superman the Mole Man, there was really no way for us to do it on demand. We would have had to wait until it was on TV somewhere, catch it sometime.
Yeah.
Now we can just like, go watch it on here, and so that's a different thing. So we live in an age where that'll be different. Like, so I guess like 20 years from now, kids, it won't be nothing for kids to watch Iron Man. They're like, well, let's go back and watch Iron Man from 2008. Like, what's that like?
It's a weird thing or a weird topic, I guess, to start thinking about is like, at what point will the superhero movies that are coming out today seem like really, really old and crappy?
When the kids that are kids now or adults, like 20 years from now, when they're adults, they'll be like, oh my God, how did you guys,
how did you think that de-aging looked good on Michael Douglas and Ant-Man?
Yeah, my God.
It's like, what? Well,
Robert Downey Jr. was Iron Man? What?
Yeah.
That old guy? Yeah. So.
But he's dead.
That guy that died last year? Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can wrap it up. It was pretty good talk.
I think so.
I think it's going to turn out to be a decent first episode. Thanks everybody for listening. Any final thoughts, Zach?
No, not really. Looking forward to the next one. What is it, Batman?
Batman 66, starring Adam West and
Sweet.
Burt Ward.
Sometimes you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Yes. God, it's going to be good. I've seen that one.
God, I've watched that
a couple times,
Yeah.
probably. One time I watched it with my wife, and at the end of it, she was like, "Thank you, that was great." She did not want to watch it, but afterwards she was like, "That was pretty funny." So
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have a good time next time. We had a good time this time. Thanks everybody for listening, and if you're viewing the video, then thanks for watching. We will talk at you next time. This is Addie.
Is Anton?
Zach.
And we have been the Supermania podcast.
Later.